Hello everybody, Ben Woodruff here with another Falconry video. Today's video I want to talk about passage birds, and specifically I want to talk about early season passage birds versus late season passage birds. Now please note, this video is not about necessarily whether you should get an early bird or a late bird, but more about what is the psychology of birds in both situations, and what is the best way to approach that psychology, respect, understand that psychology, and have success with an early or late passage bird. But before we jump into that, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to get it built up and really up and running, and if you hit subscribe, it really does help me out. And also, as always, please let me know in the comments down below what other kind of videos you'd like to have or any questions you have, and I will do the best I can to answer them and keep producing videos of the content that is requested. So, if you are new to falconry, just briefly, what is a passage bird? So, there are three, if we're diving into falconry vocabulary, three words you got to know: eyas, passage, and haggard. An eyas bird is a bird that's still under the care of its parents, is probably the best way to view it, right? It's a young bird, from hatching to an egg to, getting ready to fly. It's under the direct care of its parents. Once it is left, and it has no longer under the care of its parents, but it is a first-year bird with first-year colors and no mate, it is a passage bird. And that bird is also probably on migration. And then once it is reached adulthood, which for most raptors is, it's going into its second year of life. Condors, eagles, it's different, it takes longer. But most raptors, your average falcon, your average hawk, going into their second year of life, getting their adult feathers molted in, that is a haggard bird, okay, or a hag. So traditionally in falconry, we do not fly haggard birds from the wild, and we've even written laws accordingly, because they have a mate, most likely, and they mate for life. You don't want to take away somebody's mate, and there's extreme difficulties in training in most instances anyways, even if you were to. But we're talking about passage birds today. I live in Utah, in the northern hemisphere in North America. I understand that a lot of people living in different regions, you're going to have different experiences. Even some of the dates I'm going to be talking about, even for the same species, like a red-tailed hawk in Utah versus a red-tailed hawk in California or Alaska or, Texas. These dates and ideas of timing are going to be different, but the principles are the same of an early season passage versus a late season passage. So this time of year, I'm making this video at the very beginning of October. And it's the time of year that I live for, both in terms of hunting birds, getting already trained birds out hunting, and actually now it's hunting seasons are open and we can do our game hawking, but also for trapping. This is the time of year that I live for. It starts to cool down, and all the leaves start to change everywhere. Just the mountains start to have a dusting of snow in the highest elevations. And then as you go down, the aspens are turning yellow, the maples are turning red. It's a riot of color that assaults your visual senses, and it's just absolute heaven. I'm an artist, I'm a painter. And so just the dance of color is wonderful. But there is an energy, there is an urgency that is felt in my area all throughout the food chain. What happens is, you got to think from the perspective of songbirds. Little songbirds have been like, oh, well, summer, yeah, we might eat some seeds here and there, but mostly, here's insects, nutrient rich. Here's a spider, here's a fly, here's a grasshopper, here's a worm, a slug. These things are nutrient rich, fairly easy to digest and extract nutrition from, extract energy from. It's everywhere. All of a sudden, it's cold. All the insects die or go into hibernation. And it's like, what do? we gotta migrate. We gotta move south. Okay, let's start. They bunch up. They feed together. They migrate. They start eating seeds, which have nutrition, but it's harder to extract. And so they're just like, oh, there's this energy, this survive. So it's gone from easy to a rougher life. And it's the same thing with predatory birds, with raptors. It's like, okay, it's summer. There's a lot of, young animals, baby squirrels, baby mice, baby birds that are learning how to fly or walk or whatever, and they're easy to catch. And I'm under the care of mom and dad who are bringing food, and now suddenly that food's gone, mom and dad are gone, and suddenly a lot of animals are going into hibernation. It's like, oh, wait, what? It's a difficult time. So a lot of birds feel that I got to migrate. I got to move south. This is it's a time of fervor, of energy, urgency, and it is felt all throughout the food chain. And you can notice it. You can see it, and so I want to get into that a little bit. So when we're talking about the psychology, but I love this time of year. Now, talking about a passage bird. First, let's think about a baby, an eyas. An eyas has had everything handed to them. They hatched. Their warmth was handled by mom and dad, brooding and incubating, and we'll keep you warm. Feeding. Here, I'm tearing your food apart for you and handing it to you. You got siblings fighting for food? Everybody wants it. It's okay. We'll try our best to give everybody food. And if food's plentiful, hey, y'all get some. You might have to wait your turn if your sibling was born a couple days earlier and is louder, but you're getting your food. Okay, it's coming in. And then you're learning how to fly. You're hopping around on the branch. That's the next step. Oh, my siblings that are older are further out on the branch. I'm still in the nest. They get the food first because they're closer. Oh, I need to do that too. I need to get out on the branch. I need to fly towards mom and dad. And as you've seen in previous videos, I've mentioned how a lot of raptors, the parents, will kind of teach their offspring how to hunt. They will catch a bird or a squirrel, hamper it, but not kill it, fly near the nest, and the babies that are learning how to fly towards mom and dad, and they drop the injured animal. And then the babies go after it, the ices go after it, and kind of learn how to catch. That is this progression from then they're at that point. At some point, mom and dad leave, and the ices have to kind of scatter. Now they're on their own. They have to learn how to hunt. It is difficult. It is very difficult. And we know from surveys that between 70 to 90% of all raptors die their first year of life. It's tragic. That can be natural caused or human caused. Shot, electrocuted, hit by a car, or run into a window while they're chasing prey. But it can also be other things like, a larger bird could kill them, or maybe there's not enough prey for them to find, or even if there is, maybe they're not a good enough hunter. Maybe they catch a disease. And this was thrown into my face tonight. I was out looking at the leaves right before sunset out in the forest, and I came across a Cooper's hawk, a first-year male Cooper's hawk. This bird, the remains of it is very clearly a male Cooper's, and yet this bird probably had only been away from its parents for a couple of months tops at the most, and here it is decomposing, and right with the leaves next year there'll be no sign left of it. It's kind of sad, but nature is harsh. Nature is a very harsh cycle. So there's urgency. There was not urgency in that bird's life, its entire eyashood. And then once it kind of falls into the passage category of no longer under its parents' care, suddenly there's urgency. But that urgency only is to the level of like, I got to hunt for myself. I got to build up muscle. I got to learn speed. I got to learn agility. I need to crash the brush and catch a sparrow or whatever that Cooper's hawk would have been going after. That is the first level of urgency. That goes through, in my area, okay, the end of July, August, September. Okay, I'm getting this. I'm learning how to hunt. Yeah, okay, well, prey is getting a little more scarce and a little smarter. And then you hit October. It's cold. And it's like you can hear the drums of war, so to speak. Boom, 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 boom. Then it's like, okay, now the true dance between predator and prey happens. Because all of the prey that is left is all the dummies, all the inexperienced, all the poor choosing birds that were prey have been eaten. The only ones that are left have a brain, have experience, have an edginess to them, right? And the same thing with the predators. A lot of the birds, like this poor Cooper's hawk that didn't make it for whatever reason, Those ones didn't make it. They're gone. They're returning to the earth. So what do you have left? You have the prey is better. The predators are better. Once we get to November, whatever prey is left and whatever predators left are going to be even higher caliber in their abilities and their survivability. And it'll just keep going and going and going. And then the ones that make it next year to the next year are the ones that are going to breed, the ones that are left. So, but this is the first intense urgency. Cold, prey disappearing, that's hard because when you are cold, you're burning through calories. You think you're burning through calories as a human? Try it as a raptor. They just burn through it. I don't know if you knew this. As warm-blooded animals, raptors included, over 80% of our caloric intake goes to regulating and maintaining our body temperature. That is why when it dips below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, once it goes below it, you go 33, 34, you're like, wow, I'm cold. You go to 32, 31, you're like, oh, there's a bite. What is that? Your skin cells themselves have so much water and they're feeling that and they are fighting not crystallizing and dying. Which is called frostbite, right? So your body's like, woo, 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 woo. You have to burn through calories at a much higher rate. Now, we have clothing, but even then, we feel it. Think if you're an animal. You're just burning through those calories like crazy in order to even survive. That's why you probably have noticed if you've ever been out in the cold for a long time, you get tired. You're like, why am I tired? Because you're burning through things so much quicker. And that is the same thing for these animals. So you have now a raptor that is passage in October in my area that is for the first time feeling the urgency of there's not much prey. What prey is around is very hard to catch compared to a month earlier, and it's burning through calories faster, okay? That is what you're starting to find at this time of year in my area. So I would call that an early season passage. That is a bird that has had everything handed to it, then had, maybe a month of, I'm figuring out who I am and how this works without mom and dad doing everything for me. And now they're just starting, again, locally, first weekend of October, to be like, whoa, this is something new, right? Okay. Now, I'm going to get to the psychology in a second, but let's go to a late season passage bird. End of November, December, January is a bird that has had months of like, oh my goodness, it's cold, and it's figured something out. Maybe in the case of a Cooper's hawk, it's figured out bird feeders. It's gone down to the valley. It's left the mountains, and it's like, hey, I found bird feeders. I'm just going to patrol neighborhoods, and I'm going to try to catch birds and bird feeders. Something. Okay. I was migrating through, and I'm a red-tailed hawk, and I found at a landfill. If I'm by this landfill, there's a lot of food opportunities with seagulls and ravens and stuff that dies. I can even scavenge. There's a lot of rodents and rats that are running around eating the stuff in the landfill. I'm going to hang around there, or I'm going to fly over a farm, and I see, there's these rodent burrows from the mice. I'm going to, hang out there and just hunt from a perch. They've learned their routine. They've zeroed in on one or more specific prey visuals. Like, I go after prairie dogs. I'm a ferruginous hawk in Delta, Utah, and I'm looking for prairie dogs, right? Or whatever it may be. They've zeroed in on that. I am a prairie falcon, and I've learned that there are pigeons that always frequent this cut cornfield, and I know if I'm up on this radio tower by sunrise, that at some point the pigeons are going to go in there and I'm going to be able to catch one. They've figured out a prey identity. They've figured out a way. They've gotten set in that way, okay? And that's where they're at. They're scrappy, tough survivors. So let's get into the psychology of these two. Normally, I personally prefer an earlier passage bird to a late. But I want to tell you the good and the bad of both. And again, the dates I'm sharing here are, again, local. I want you to understand the principles of psychology and just understand how to approach these two birds. So with an early season passage, what is good? Two things. Number one, it's already figured out how it is. If it's like locally, if I trap a Cooper's hawk or a red-tailed hawk in early to mid-October, that is a bird that knows I'm not a baby. Mom and dad are not coming back. I've figured that out. I'm quiet. I don't vocalize. I know how to hunt. I've built up my muscle mass. But you come along early enough that you are the next stage and you're appreciated. I mean, I know it's not, oh, I appreciate that this falconer is giving me food. I'm using verbiage that conveys an idea, even though I know in the psychology of the raptor, that's not how they would view it, as appreciation. But I'm saying it is easier to train because they're like, hey, food is a commodity. Mom and dad stopped giving it to me. I've had time where I've had to get my own food for at least a month, maybe 2, maybe 3. Now you come along and, remember from my other videos, food is the language of trust. Food is social bonding in falconry. It is not simply a reward system. It is social bonding. Everybody wants to kill you and take your food in the raptor world, or kill you and make you food. And so if you're like, hey, I will give you food, not only you giving food, but them accepting food from you is an act of social bonding. It is the way we build trust. But remember, that gets really ugly because if you do things wrong, you can have aggression, because food is also something to mantle over and defend because everybody wants to kill you for your food. So one of the problems we have with imprints, with young Iases that are raised young, if you imprint them incorrectly and introduce food in ways that aren't balanced properly, they can be aggressive. They can be extremely vocal and aggressive to you. So an early passage shouldn't do that if you get them at the right time. Here is where you got to be careful, because where is the line between a new passage and an early passage? Where's the cutoff? It's different for every region and every species, right? And like I said, for me, locally, I would like to take a Cooper's hawk, a red-tailed hawk, first weekend of October. That's me. Second week of October still for red-tail, but that's getting far enough away for a Cooper's hawk. I'm like, it's starting to get into the realm of an older passage, a late passage, sorry. So why does that matter? Because if it's too early, if here's where I left mom and dad, and then, and now this falconer's training me, you become mom and dad. And so food issues can become aggression issues, and it can almost be like a half imprint where they're like, mom and dad disappeared. This human's kind of filling the role of mom and dad. They're giving me food, and they can start to develop misprinted imprint behavior. Okay, but if you get it right, and you get it right at the right time, they sort of appreciate you. They train easily. They understand food is social bonding. They're like, wow, yeah, I've had it rough for a month or two, and now it's getting cold. There's urgency. What is this new thing? Cold for the first time. Prey limited for the first time. Thank you, human. Okay, cool. Let's work together. Yeah, this work. I know what hunting is because I've done it for a month or two, and now I see with the help of this human, I have a better advantage. Maybe they're carrying me and making sure food appears. Or if I wait on above them, they have a dog that is flushing prey and finding it. Prey always appears when I'm around this human. And even if it doesn't, I still get a meal. The transition works very, very well, okay? So that's what I prefer, but again, the psychology is, as far as they know, it's just this happened, I hatched, and then this, and this, and this, and then you come along, and now you're hunting together, you're out in the field. It's normal progression in their mind if you time it right, and it's really a good thing. Now, late season passage birds, they've had many more months. Again, late November, December, January, you're trapping a bird, and you're like, okay, this bird definitely knows how to hunt. It survived some of the hardest times of the year, but it has had a long enough time that without any other step, you showing up and being like, hey, I want to train you to be a hunting companion. Here's some food. They're like, what? I don't know what you're talking about, mammal. They're just, you have to kind of have them backtrack a little. It is not a natural progression in their mind. Mom and dad feed me, I learn how to fly, mom and dad ditch me, I hunt for a month, human comes along. That's not there. It's like, mom and dad ditch me, I have to learn to hunt for months. And so the wildness is there. Now, a lot of people prefer that. They like that wild edge, that kind of, That's fine. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but the psychology, you need to understand your psychological approach is that you have to build far more trust and you have to backtrack their thinking quite a bit because it wasn't in the natural order. They're not understanding it nearly as easily. They will have a more wild edge. Now, when I say this too, I've got to mention, not only does it vary region to region as far as when that timing would be, but also species to species and individual to individual. For me, when I hunt merlins, trap merlins, my favorite time to get normally for most of my best merlin falcons has been the first cold snap, the first rainstorm that I get in October. That's when I like to trap. And a lot of merlin trappers I greatly respect have very different views. They're like, I want to wait until the first snowfall of the year. Whenever that is, I'm going out trapping. Why are you even going out anyways? There's leaves on the trees. The merlins can hide in them. For me, I want an October merlin if I'm going to get a merlin. But the best merlin I ever had that I flew for a number of years was a black Suclei subspecies merlin named Jessica. She was great at catching doves and quail. And pigeons. I'd have her go after pigeons. She caught pigeons with no problem. She'd catch them and she'd dispatch them herself with 1 foot. And if you've ever flown merlins, you know the pigeon's a big prey. She was great, and I caught her. We used to have seasons that would start and end. Now it's just kind of it's a little looser. But back then, the end of January was the end of our trapping season. I caught her like 2 or 3 days before the end of trapping season. It's like, that's a little late to be starting your season, but we had a great end of our season, and then I flew her on and on and on, and she was great. She was my best. She was a late season bird. So even though I have sort of my way, yet here is an exception to the rule. And same thing with prairie falcons, just any of them, any bird, if you have a trapping in your area, the key is talk to your sponsor if you're a new falconer. If you're not a new falconer, but you're doing a bird you haven't done before, talk to the falconers in your area and say, hey, what's been your experience? What is the best time of year? Do you prefer an early or a late season bird for this or that species, and why? Get their inside scoop on it. But again, the thing to remember is that the psychology, the approach, is that an early season bird knows no different. You can get them up and running really quickly. They can, and remember, you have to be careful, more careful on the food issue. You build the trust with food, but remember, if you got them just a little too early, their mindset can still go into imprint mode. So you have to be more careful about giving them a big meal on your glove, for example, because they might revert to baby mode. So be conscientious of that. Watch for it. Watch their behavior. And if you see them being a little too over food, or they start to vocalize a little, you got to change that approach really quickly. With a late season passage, who cares? They're so far from the mindset of baby, and like, wait, was there ever a time? It's December. Was there ever a time when there was something called green leaves? I don't even hardly recall that. And so, yeah, hey, the best way to approach is to, usually, with most species, is to overemphasize food on that late season passage without much fear of that. But be careful, because again, you're going to have to take more time to build more trust, typically, with a late season passage than with an early season passage. This early bird, has less hunting experience, which gives you the opportunity to introduce more new things. If you want to do something wacky, if you're like, hey, normally we fly merlins on flocks of starlings or on sparrows. I want to go hunt quail with a merlin. Huh? Okay, it's easier to do with an early season merlin. If you have a late season merlin, convincing them to do something a little out of the norm, it's going to be a bit harder. Same thing with a redtail. Any redtail can be trained to catch a rabbit. But an early season redtail, you're like, a rabbit? Okay, introduce me to rabbits. And you set up some successful scenarios, like with bagged rabbits, so I guarantee get it. Okay. Late season is like, no, I went after a big ground squirrel and it bit me. I don't want to go after a rabbit. That seems huge. It's going to be a little harder the later you go. Again, there's all kinds of factors. If you're in Southern California or Texas and it's hot where you're at, maybe you don't have that urgency. If you're in Minnesota and you're like, who cares? I know falconers in extremely cold areas, and like Minnesota and parts of Canada, where they've told me, hey, yeah, I do weight management, but once it gets absolutely bone-chilling frigid, I just beef them up fat, and as long as they're trained, the cold is so intense, the bird's like, hey, you're providing food or providing game for me to hunt, I'm there. I know you as a source, and weight management is hardly even an issue. So again, talk to your locals, find out what's normal in your area. But remember those principles for an early season versus a late season. And again, I usually like an early season, but again, there's always exceptions to the rules, and find out what works best in your area. So something to think about, something to ponder. I hope that that was of interest to you to watch that video. Again, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and let me know down in the comments what other videos you would like to see, and what questions you have about passage birds. And as always, happy hawking.